Thank you for joining us again at Home Buyers Money Map. Today we are going to shine a light on the expenses that many people might overlook until the very last minute. So some of the forgotten costs of buying, basically, other than your down payment and maybe like lawyer fees that people usually think of. And that could actually be quite significant. So I have here again with me today, Damon Steele from Pilot Mortgage Group. And Damon, so some of the things that people kind of forget, one of the big things is definitely property transfer tax, and then we often refer to as PTT. So that's quite a big shock for some buyers, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Probably the biggest expense outside of, well, your down payment and realtor fees that a lot of people, especially people who haven't grown up here, are like, what? I gotta pay how much?
Yeah. So there are actually some reliefs for some people in terms of government is actually trying to get people to buy like new builds. So there are a lot right now. So newly built homes in BC, we're looking at kind of if you're eligible to kind of have some exemption or some relief is that you gotta be a citizen, or you could be a PR as well, so permanent resident. And if you're buying the property as a principal resident, then that's like 1.24 acres. Usually in Vancouver, you're not gonna really get that. So we're not too worried about the size. If you buy a newly built home, that's 1.1 million and under, you could actually potentially qualify for exemption for the property transfer tax. In terms of people coming to you, do you remind them of that, or like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's like, people have money, they're like, hey, I've saved up, I finally got my like 5% down payment, or I've got like a percentage of money that I plan to put towards it. Before we go any further, we need to talk about what are the other costs that you're gonna have to pay in order to be able to buy this home, because the last thing that we would want is for somebody right by the time they're about to close on their home, having their lawyer tell them, by the way, you also need to bring in another $20,000 to cover X, whatever it happens to be. So we want to make sure that any of the taxes, be it property transfer tax, additional GST, things like that, that might impact your qualification. So these rules change. These things have changed recently. So like in terms of like how much you have to pay for taxes, whether you avoid it or not. I guess in order for this to somewhat be evergreen, what I would always suggest to people is like, don't feel like you have to do all of the homework yourself. There are calculators online. Oh, yeah. We also offer calculators as well that will help you calculate what you'd be paying. But like, if you really just want to like take this off your hands, work with some people that you can trust, that you know are going to be able to make sure that you're not going to be short any money when it comes to buying a property.
Yeah, because the cost is quite substantial, and then there's like a tier of calculation. So people's like, especially I know a lot of people's like, oh, I don't do well with numbers. So we want to break it down to you. Basically, it's the first 200,000 you're paying 1% for the first 200,000 of your property. That's towards the property transfer tax. And if you the balance of basically 200,000 up to 2 million, you're paying 2% of that into the property transfer. And if you're buying something that's over 2 million, which is probably easily happening in Vancouver, you're paying 3% above the 2 million. And if you go over 3 mil, then you have to pay additional 2%. So that's like calculation. So there are like tools out there that's very like either mortgage broker or a real estate agent can very easily help you. It's an Excel formula they can just set up and then it'll calculate for you. But I understand it's kind of intimidating for a lot of people who's like already dealing with a lot of numbers. They're like all the different sort of down payment they have to deal with, interest rate, and how much they have to, like, what do they qualify for? Just so many numbers throwing out there when you're shopping for a home. So this is one thing that you can just rely on the professional to kind of help you get through that, but you just have to keep that in mind that you have to have the money for it, because this is something, unless you're qualified for exemption, you absolutely have to pay.
Yeah, there's a lot of gotchas when it comes to real estate or just anything in British Columbia when it comes to buying and selling property. So it's always best to be working with professionals who make sure that they get ahead of all of this stuff so that there are no surprises. It's like working with an accountant, right? Maybe you want to deduct something off of your income because you're trying to take advantage of something. Before you go and take that advice that you just heard about on TikTok, probably best to speak with some professionals that are going to be able to make sure that, hey, you can do this, but you need to watch out for this because it's never that clear cut.
Yeah, TikTok is not always the bad thing if you're actually listening to a professional. I know a lot of people out there, they like to share their experience and everything, but it's still good to kind of talk to people who's in the industry so they can give you the most updated information, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And since government is trying to encourage people to buy new homes, you have to understand if you're buying a completely new home, new build, you are paying GST.
Yeah.
So, but there are some GST credits, and that's just actually very recently rolled out with the new government.
Yep.
Basically, if you qualify, if you buy a new home and you're a first-time home buyer, if you buy something that's under $1 million, you can actually apply for the rebate. So remember, this is a rebate. You still have to pay it first, and then you can apply for the money back. So you still need to have money prepared for this. And if you're buying something between 1 million and 1.5, it's a linear phase-out rebate. So you can get the most rebate if you buy 1 million and under, but anything beyond that, your rebate actually decreases as you start to hit that 1.5 mark. So other significant costs. Lawyers' fees is compared to like the property transfer tax is a lot less, but it's still something you have to be prepared for. Title insurance. Can you tell us a little bit about title insurance?
Yeah, so title insurance, so this is not something that you really have to like put together for yourself. Typically it's an insurance that the lender requires, but the lawyer will get for you. So, and it's usually all kind of bundled in together. Title insurance just basically protects the lender in the event there's any fraudulent claims against the title, maybe the property boundaries, like your fence was over further onto the property line than another. There's a whole bunch of other issues that it really covers, and that's why lenders like to have it in place. It's not super costly. It's dependent on how much money you're borrowing and how much the property might be worth, but your lawyer is going to put it together. If you're trying to kind of like keep in mind like the maximum that you might end up paying all in, might be around $2,000 to $3,000 for purchase of a property. If you're selling a property and buying another one, there's going to be an increased cost there because you're getting the lawyer to help you on that end as well. So that's usually what I tend to tell clients is like to be prepared and have aside a certain amount of money that's going to be able to kind of cover all of those property related, call it conveyancing fees?
Yeah, conveyancing. They also include adjustments. So basically, for example, you're buying a property, the closing day is like July 1st. And the current owner might have already paid for property taxes or strata fees or utilities, like because some cities, they pay annual utilities. So if they already prepared certain things, basically starting July 1st and on, it should be your cost. So this part you don't have to calculate because your lawyer or your notary would calculate all those things, but you do have to have the money for it. So then those money will need to go to the seller. So if you're a buyer, that money will have to, basically you have to kind of reimburse them for things that's already been prepaid. So on top of basically the conveyancing part where you pay at the lawyer, the other thing you have to consider is your home insurance. You do have to get enough insurance for your home. Just, it's a big purchase. So you do want that to be protected. And can you think of anything else? I think we kind of cover all our bases, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So thanks, Damon, for joining us today. And so this episode's takeaway is basically you gotta keep your money, as much money in your pocket. So at the same time, you gotta kind of understand the cost that's associated with your purchase. Beyond just down payment and getting a mortgage. Those are the biggest ones. So remember, you have to pay your property transfer tax. And then when it comes to lawyers, you have to pay your lawyer and you have to pay all of the money that's already been prepaid by the seller back to them. So that's kind of how the end of that transaction is. And then of course, you have to make sure that you have home insurance to protect your property. So thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions or topic suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments for me, and contact Damon at Pilot Mortgage Group if you have any home financing needs. Until next time, have a good one.